Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Mailbox for the 3rd of June 2011. My name is Totalbiscuit, bringing you your daily podcast of community interaction, discussions, and all that good stuff. You can email in mailbox@cynicalbrit.com. That is mailbox@cynicalbrit.com, with topics for future shows. The game in the background is the one and only Deus Ex. I don't know, I felt like playing an old-school shooter done right after playing the demo for Duke Nukem Forever. Oh my. This one comes in from Bob, and it says, "Hello TB, I recently caught myself being nostalgic for my formative years in gaming, back when I was only in single digits, and playing the literal hundreds of games my brother had for the Amiga and Amstrad CPC. I'm glad we're returning to that era in some way, with the indie titles filling the market right now, but it does raise some concerns about the state of the AAA industry, if people are far more willing to spend £40 on a handful of not necessarily great games than purchasing one £40 mediocre AAA title. And that's not to say I don't like AAA titles, but the trend of lackluster sequels has made me give second thought to purchasing a lot of games, and that's all the AAA seem to be doing. A fact not helped by the other recent trend of pre-order bonuses, which seem to be a desperate attempt to ensure that they cover some of the losses of a half-arsed game. So I ask you, Mr. Biscuit, do you think the AAA in its current state is sustainable? Will the shift of players to indie games have a positive impact on AAA games? Why do the publishers seem to push games out faster than they can be developed properly, when a fully completed game would get more sales and more favourable reviews? Thanks for your time." Well, that's a multi-tier question. I think the first thing to address is the whole idea that a fully completed game will get more sales and more favourable reviews. It may get more favourable reviews, certainly, at least after the fact. Bear in mind that many anticipated titles also have review embargoes on them, and we've heard about agreements. And these agreements come down to the following basic principle. You give our game a certain score and you can release your review early. If you do not, then you have to wait until such and such a time. And the problem is that, obviously, if the review comes out first, more people will read that than something that comes in later on. It's why I'm very, very thankful that I don't do reviews, because otherwise I would be competing to get it out first. At the current state, I can put out my WTF is whenever the hell I please, because it's not really about telling people whether or not to buy a title, it's about exposing them to a game in its most honest and raw form, and trying to give them an idea of whether or not they might be interested in it. Now, in the case of whether or not a game will sell more if it's fully completed, the problem is that marketing actually overwhelms this an awful lot. They can throw a lot of money at marketing and they can just sell a bunch on release and do really well that way and hopefully recoup their losses. And by the time that people actually get to the part where it's buggy or it's unplayable or it's badly balanced or it's simply unfinished, then it doesn't matter. They've already got the game. It's not like they can return it. They can maybe trade it in, but then, of course, once a lot of people start trading it in, then the market for it tanks and people don't even bother anymore. So let's stick with this game that's basically useless. Alpha Protocol would be a good example of that one. Oh my. I certainly agree that in the long term it's a better bet, and I think maybe some publishers are coming around to this, but you should also bear in mind that with the advent of digital distribution, and I keep saying that, the advent of digital distribution, it works, you know, it's a good term, I think I just overuse it a little bit. It's a double-edged sword. One, you can sell games for a longer period, thanks to digital distribution, because you can change around the price model at will, and if it's a good game with modability and so forth, then people will buy it, and hell, some people might even buy it multiple times on different platforms for whatever reason. But here's the other thing, and this is both a good and a bad thing. With Steam, particularly, not so much with other services, but mostly with Steam, you'll find that there is the ability to automatically update a game. And that means you can release a game unfinished, and you can then patch it later. And you can still get those day one sales, and you can save money by doing a hack job on the patch later on, as opposed to finishing the game off first and maybe missing the release window. That's another thing to consider, by the way. If you've got a release window, what you'll generally try and do if you're a publisher is set the release of the game in such a way that you don't end up clashing with other similar titles. For instance, if there's a AAA title coming out that day that you know a bunch of people are going to buy, then your title probably won't do very well. This is the same reason why releasing Darksiders and Bayonetta on the same day was incredibly stupid. Now, they're not the same game by any means, but they do cater to the same kind of market, and as a result, you actually had a split. People can't necessarily afford multiple $40 to $60 titles, or as you said, £30 to £40. That's a lot of money to spend, particularly with console games that are generally pricier than PC. So what you have is the publishers that will look and say, well, we can release here because it's not really clashing with anything major here, or perhaps it's not a AAA release, or maybe the releases on that week just aren't the same genre, so we appeal to a different kind of demographic. And if it then slips, then you lose that opportunity. So often you'll find that a publisher will turn around and say, no, we have to release then. Developer says, oh, well, we can't have it finished by then. It's like, well, it doesn't matter. We have to release then. There is no other release window for this. So there's a lot to actually consider. The current state of AAA is tenuous, I would say, because of the costs of it, and the reason, as I've said before in previous mailboxes, that they keep releasing sequels is because, one, they keep selling, and two, because they're safer. Risking on a new IP that fails could actually destroy a development studio, and it has happened before. We've seen plenty of examples of things that have failed and have just tanked a studio completely, and that's not good at all. Really, really bad. So, yes, bear all of those things in mind. The market is not quite as easy as one might think to understand. I certainly wish that it was, but there you go. This one comes in from Pablo that says, on the 2nd of June mailbox, you had a question about your opinion on the meta game in games like Dota and Mario franchises. At one point you were talking about how you'll get comments about the Beat Hazard video in the background, complaining about your skill level, what difficulty setting you were on, and so forth. As a well-known commentator, do you ever not post videos of games because you are horrid at them for any reason? Not just videos where the game is the centerpiece, like say WTF is, but also videos where the gameplay is filler in the background, like Mailbox. Is it ever just not worth all the ignorant comments when you could just put in a game that you are more skilled at? Or is it a case of, it's the internet, no one is ever happy mindset? To be honest, the gameplay in the background really is just a filler. It really, really is. I like to have different games going in the background because I think variety is kind of neat. And if I put, say, Section 8 Prejudice in the background every single time, I think people might get a bit bored of it. And then also people would turn around and say, well, why aren't you making these into full videos if you're good at this game? Now, there's something to consider. I'm not really a commentator like, say, COD commentators are, or Battlefield, or Halo, or anything like that. Those are the kind of players that only play one game and they get really, really good at it. And that's what they base their channel around. This channel has never been about one game, ever, at any point. Even when the beta was going on, I was still doing StarCraft videos, and I was still releasing WTF's content and introductory stuff and things like that. So this channel has thrived on its variety, and I think people do appreciate that. I also think that it's probably about time that channels like this really came into the fore and captured that demographic of people that play lots of different games. And yes, those people do exist. There are a few other channels that do this. I mean, Yogscast does it quite a bit. Also, X, I don't know if you've heard of X. X does a lot of Let's Play stuff and commentary on a lot of different games, a lot of variety available there. So he's pretty popular too. And I think there is a demographic there for people that just like to see different games and experience all of what gaming has to offer. Gaming is an extremely varied hobby with a wide variety of genres and game types at your disposal. I don't see any reason to stick to just one or two. That seems absurd, and why would you restrict yourself that way? As regards to the comments, I don't read them. As I said, I have something installed called YouTube Comment Snob, and what that does is it blocks all YouTube comments. It is impossible for me to read comments unless that add-on breaks, which it actually did recently, and oh my god, it gave me a headache. But I have a couple of moderators that use my account that have access through that, and they can have a look and they can deal with trolls and things like that, and they will actually hand on the good feedback. So if someone spots a mistake, usually someone will grab me over Twitter or Facebook with it anyway before my moderator gets to it, but if there's good feedback, then it will be handed on to me and I'll take it that way. But nah, I'm not insecure enough to be concerned as to whether or not I am good at game X. I don't care, it's a video game, I play lots of them. You know, I make my living this way. Why would I be insecure about it? Hell, I stream StarCraft 2 every night, and I'm awful at that. So, no. I would never, ever stop putting out a video because I did badly at it. Sure, it's nice that I do well at something. I mean, actually, the footage of Beat Hazard yesterday, I did pretty well. I mean, I got a set of perfects. I was doing pretty alright, honestly. You know, people that picked up that game and just played now of it probably couldn't do as well as I did there, but, well, there you go. I'm not too concerned. I'll happily put out videos of me failing. But I think the most important thing is to ensure that I actually have entertaining footage. For instance, I had one COD game. You remember a couple of days ago I did a Call of Duty in the background? I just completely screwed it up. I was running around with dual pistols, which is pretty rubbish anyway, dual Makarovs, and I screwed it up so badly that I'm like, no one wants to watch this. This just isn't amusing in any way. It's just me falling over. So I didn't put that one up, but at the end of the day, the footage in the background was of me playing. It wasn't edited to make me look better, it was just of me playing. And I will stick to that, because I think the honesty is appreciated by most people. I certainly hope so. This one comes in from Chris that says, Dear Totalbiscuit, on May the 2nd, you replied to an email about metagaming and how gaming communities force players to abide to certain rules and regulations. Knowing how passionately you despise the so-called entitlement, your double standards struck me as odd. You seem to defend those who demand they be allowed to use whatever character and build they wish in a cooperative multiplayer environment. In my opinion, that's incredibly selfish, and everyone should understand that some characters and tactics are popular for a reason, because they are good. Okay, so before we go any further with this email, you can read it on the screen if you like, but I'd like to point out that you're actually wrong. And to cite this, I will provide you with the mailbox from yesterday, which went something along these lines. Yeah, that stuff can go to hell, quite frankly. Play a game that you enjoy in a way that you enjoy, and unless you are somehow impeding the other people's enjoyment of the game by making your unorthodox choices, then just freaking do it. Don't care what anybody else thinks of you, and for God's sake, stop condemning people over what they choose to do in a video game that they bought. As I said before, it does not matter unless you are negatively affecting the play experience of your teammates. That is the only time when adhering to the metagame should actually matter. Otherwise, do whatever the hell you please. There you go. So that was actually in the video yesterday. You can check if you don't believe me. And the point is really quite simple. Unless you are playing in an environment whereby you have to cooperate with a team and your choices would negatively affect that team to the point where the enjoyment of your teammates is significantly diminished, then the metagame can go to hell. At the end of the day, the metagame is generally there for one reason, and that's to support and help shape what competitive gaming does in that particular game. A lot of games have a metagame for no reason, simply because they don't have a competitive scene, so why is there a metagame? Like say, oh, well, you know, this gun is better, and we should use this gun. Well, actually, it doesn't matter all that much. Some people might simply be better with other ones. I mean, an example that you're making here, you say similarly in games like LoL or WoW, teams and raids have a set composition and fixed builds because through trial and error spreadsheets and far too much free time, people have found methods that simply work. If you're a tiny cog in the machinery, a nooblet and a nobody believe you have the right to break the balance others have spent so much time perfecting, then you are an entitled little and do not deserve the right to play with others. Once again, I didn't say anything about the right to play with others. But here's the thing. The vast majority of people do not play at a high enough level for the metagame to matter. This is another point that I was making yesterday by saying that a lot of people are tier whores. As in, they look at the tier lists and they say, oh, well, if this hero isn't tier 1, you shouldn't be playing him. That's actually nonsense. And this is something you need to get into your hand, particularly with LoL as a prime example. Elements. Elements is the guy that puts together the most commonly accepted tier list, unless, of course, you read the Brazilian tier list, which I do from time to time. And what that means is that in a extremely high-level, competitively balanced game where the teams have picked... Bear in mind, this is for draft mode. This is for doing drafts, single pick, counter picks, things like that. It is not for all random blind pick. That's not what it's for. If you turn around and tell me that that hero is low tier and you shouldn't be playing him in a game with blind pick, then you do not understand what tiers actually are. It's as simple as that. That's the problem with metagaming. The fact that most of the time, metagaming is damn inappropriate. It really, really is. And if you're at the level where metagaming matters, then 1, you probably know it, and 2, chances are you're not being a dick about it. This one comes in from Peter H. It says, Hi TB, while I was watching the mailbox for the 2nd of June, I found myself shouting at the screen one of the questions referenced Minecraft or Terraria's graphics, stating that when combined with the gameplay, they're pure genius. This particular fallacy comes up time and again, and it's that of graphics of a game versus the aesthetics of a game. The graphics are the technical capabilities of the game to output images on the screen. Better graphics means fancier effects and bigger scenes. Also means higher texture quality and things like that. Aesthetics, on the other hand, mean the overall art style of the game, how the game looks and feels and plays, and this is really what the writer of the previous statement was getting at. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love Minecraft and Terraria's aesthetics, but in all honesty, the graphics of both games are subpar. My point is this, so long as people keep complaining about or praising the graphics of a game, we will continue to see the same brown, uninteresting, washed-out look that AAA games currently have. Until the community as a whole realizes the difference between graphics and aesthetics, we will never really advance forward from where we are right now, and games will never really have the chance to be accepted as a valid medium of entertainment alongside film, book, and television in the mainstream media. It's a fairly valid point, honestly, and if you've seen the same extra credits episode that I have on the subject of aesthetics versus graphics, then you will no doubt share his opinion, and I share his opinion as well. I think it comes down to people having this idea of what a good-looking game is and simply disregarding anything that breaks away from that norm. For instance, I had some guy claim that Akami has bad graphics, and I had to restrain the urge to slap him about the face with a wet fish. It's like, what are you talking about? Do you even know what that means? I mean, do you understand things like, say, the difference between shader models, the capabilities of various DirectX versions or OpenGL versions, for instance? Do you know what full-screen ambient occlusion is? Do you know what anti-aliasing is? Do you know what anisotropic filtering is? Can you tell the difference between texture quality? Do you know what high-resolution textures actually are and why they change the way that things look? That's the problem. Do you know the difference between the different capabilities of engines, for instance? This is the kind of information you need to know if you want to debate graphics. If you want to debate aesthetics, you need to know nothing at all, because aesthetics is basically the same as saying that piece of art is bad, and most of the time it's impossible to say that. I would like to name a few artists that I think are a waste of space. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to stoop to that level. But yes, terminology is a massive problem within the gaming community in general because it impedes the ability to discuss things rationally, because people simply do not know enough about anything. The problem is, they believe because they play video games, they are experts on video games, and actually, they're not. They really, really aren't. It's the same reason why people that, say, sit around and casually watch the Super Bowl every now and again are not actually qualified to coach a team. And as a direct comparison, people that play video games every now and again are not qualified to debate the finer points of them, certainly aren't qualified to review them, and definitely aren't qualified to make them. As a direct result of that, we have discussions between people who are basically ignorant, and nothing good can ever come from that. I would encourage anyone that wants to get involved in the discussion of this particular hobby to actually know what the hell they're talking about. This is going to sound hypocritical as hell, considering my usual habits, but the wonderful thing about the internet is that, you see that argument over there? You don't actually have to be involved in it. They're not talking directly to you. You can simply walk away and ignore it. More often than not, it is not worthwhile to mud wrestle with a pig. You both get dirty, and the pig likes it, so what's the point? Yes, that is a life lesson that I should learn, and my god, do old habits die hard. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Totalbiscuit. Thank you for watching the Mailbox today. You can email in mailbox@cynicalbrit.com with topics for future shows. This will be the last Mailbox for this week. Mailboxes go on Monday to Friday. And no doubt, I will see you Monday. Hopefully you have a safe and fantastic weekend. And I will see you next time.